The realization that sleep not only had a purpose other than making you feel less sleepy, but was also a complex set of brain states, not simply a state of unconsciousness between going to bed and waking up, had a profound effect. It sparked my interest in sleep and its disorders, and has led me into this fascinating and often bizarre clinical realm of sleep medicine. In this twilight world, glitches in the human brain result in striking and poorly understood conditions, all the more so as, in contrast to chest pain, headaches, skin rashes, or more usual medical symptoms, these problems often arise without any awareness, at a time when people's brains and minds are detached from their internal and external world. In what follows, I'll introduce you to some of my patients who've been willing to share their stories. The tales of these individuals are dramatic, terrifying, illuminating, poignant, and sometimes amusing. You will see how their disorders affect the lives of those around them, their relationships with partners and children, as well as their own. So why is it that I'm writing about these patients? And more importantly, why should you listen to them? Many of the stories that follow are about patients with extreme sleep disorders, at the very limits of the spectrum of human experience. And it is by studying these extremes that we learn about the less severe end of the spectrum. By understanding how these patients are affected by their sleep disorders, we come to know a little about how we ourselves are affected by our sleep. Many of these conditions are not rare either. Chronic insomnia affects 1 in 10 adults, sleep apnea about 1 in 15, and restless leg syndrome about 1 in 20. It is almost certain that anyone listening to this book will either suffer from one or more of these disorders themselves, or know someone close to them who does. Doctors love stories. We love telling them and we love hearing them. We teach, learn and entertain each other with stories. In medical parlance, what a patient tells you in their own words is the history, the story of their problem. As medical students and junior doctors, we acquire the skills to extract this history. Our medical journals and conferences are full of case histories, and it is precisely through the sharing of these stories that we circulate expertise and further our knowledge base. I'm a neurologist first and foremost, and the skills that I've learnt through my neurological training are equally applicable in the practice of sleep medicine. As registrars, the equivalent of senior residents in the US, at the National Hospital for Neurology, Queen Square in central London, we were exposed to a rite of passage, the venerated Gowers round on a Thursday afternoon. Largely for teaching purposes, but also to provide some entertainment, this session takes place in a large lecture theatre with steep stalls. From the second row, where the neurology registrars sat, it felt a little like being in one of the amphitheatres of Rome, and we were about to be fed to the lions. The craftiest registrars among us would find a patient that urgently needed assessment on the wards, so that they could creep into the rear of the auditorium late, along with the hordes of junior doctors, medical students and visiting neurologists from abroad. The most devious would arrange for a colleague to page them early in the proceedings, so that they could make a show of leaving to deal with an emergency, before sneaking in at the back of the lecture theatre later on. The audience would await the sporting event with gleeful anticipation, while the registrars could only hope to survive the ordeal with a shred of dignity left intact. I've heard stories of colleagues vomiting in nervousness every Thursday lunchtime, others taking a beta-blocker pill to calm their anxiety prior to entering. For a painful 90 minutes, 3 cases would be presented. Usually the patients would be wheeled in at the front, and the consultant chairing Gowers that day would grill the registrars on the cases, often exposing gaping holes in our knowledge under the glare of 200 people sitting behind us. After a particularly humiliating session, you would feel 400 eyes burning into the back of your head, as you wished that the earth would open up and swallow you whole. Some of my colleagues still talk about their most painful experiences 20 years later. Such is the impact. Even talking about it now, I feel a slight flush, a delicate churning in the stomach. As excruciating as these rounds were, they provided a fantastic opportunity to learn and to see conditions that you might never have heard of before, the knowledge perhaps reinforced by the sheer terror of the lesson. I myself shall remember AAA syndrome and its association with neurological problems until my dying days, even though I've never heard it even mentioned since.